Good morning. My name is Chuck Riley. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in the College of Engineering and Computer Science, and it is my privilege to welcome you to our leadership seminar this morning. Our speaker is Beverly J. Seay. She's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Analysis, Simulations, Systems, Engineering, and Training, or ASSET Business Unit with Science Applications International Corporation. SAIC is a Fortune 500 scientific, engineering, and technology applications company that solves vital problems in national security, energy and the environment, critical infrastructure, and health. Founded in 1969, SAIC generates revenues of more than $10 billion annually and has about 43,000 employees. Ms. Seay manages the development and delivery of services, systems, products, and operations support for modeling and simulation collaboration, experimentation, and training, as well as global threat reduction and nuclear deterrence. She also leads the enterprise-level implementation of SAIC's Modeling and Simulation Center of Excellence. Ms. Seay led the innovation of key pioneering approaches in systems engineering, modeling and simulation, and the delivery of complex composable software and hardware systems. Under her leadership, ASSET was awarded the 2010 National Training and Simulation Association's Modeling and Simulation Award for exceptional performance in training. Ms. Seay established SAIC's Mentoring Connection and the Strategic Training for Employee Progress, or STEP leadership program, and launched SAIC's Women's Network to support professional development and diversity within SAIC. She is a strong advocate for computing and engineering education for women and minorities. Ms. Seay now holds positions on a number of boards, including the U.S. Strategic Command Strategic Advisory Group, UCF's College of Engineering and Computer Science Dean's Advisory Board, the Georgia Tech College of Computing Advisory Board, the Peter Kiewit Institute Advisory Board at the University of Nebraska, and the Association of the U.S. Army Board of Governors Sunshine Chapter, and the Florida First Executive Advisory Board, among others. Ms. Seay received a BS in Mathematics and an MS in Computers, Information, and Control Engineering from the University of Michigan. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Beverly Seay.
Thank you, Chuck. It's really a pleasure to be invited to speak to you today. I thought I'd talk to you about my career, my story in entrepreneurism. In particular, I like to talk about innovation and boundary spanning. These are two concepts very close to my heart, and I'll talk to you in the context of something that I'm just devoted to, and that's entrepreneurism, whether it's business or social entrepreneurism. So how many of you want to be an entrepreneur? Okay. How many of you want to work really hard? Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to work really hard. But if you're passionate and you're dedicated to what you're doing, it actually seems easy. So there are three themes that I want to point out. There are many things that you need to know, and you'll learn them along the way as you're finishing up here and going out in the business world and becoming an entrepreneur. But the three things that really stand out for me is you need to have a strategy. That's your vision, and it's going to guide your decisions and help you communicate your story. You need an adaptable business model. It needs to be expandable, and it needs to be scalable. But most of all, you need an ever-expanding social network that you're going to develop by learning to develop relationships. That's probably the most important thing that I can tell you today about being an entrepreneur or being in the business world. So, when I started out, about where you are now, it was the mid-1970s. It was an interesting time for women in business. I finished my master's at the University of Michigan, where there were only a couple of women in the engineering program. Okay? I will tell you that I started out going after my master's because I'd finished up with math and had gone into computer science. But I really thought I wanted to be a computer scientist. And I, in fact, knew that's what I wanted to do. But I also learned back in that day, it wasn't just about the woman issue, but if you wanted the engineers to respect you and talk to you and feel you're credible in software, you needed an engineering degree. So that's why the computer engineering, okay? Fortunately, I think computer science is really ruling these days. Both my daughters are computer science grads, and I think the world is really migrating towards a really good balance in the software and the hardware and the integration of the two. So back then, I spent about 13 years as a software engineer in a variety of companies, mainly building products. And then because of all the people that I come to know and my relationships, I was introduced to a company called Science Applications International Corporation. Now, I thought I was joining some little small company, and not long after I joined, they flew me out to San Diego, and I went, wow, this was a phenomenal company that just an unbelievable individual named Dr. Bob Beister built. And his whole philosophy was that if you took really smart people and you turned them loose and let them be entrepreneurs, they could really build a business. So I always thought I wanted to run my own business, so I figured, you know, I'll do this for a while and then see how things come out. But the way Dr. Beister set up SAIC is that he created an environment where you didn't have to worry about all the day-to-day business things. I mean, you had to know about them, you had to learn them, you had to understand the metrics. But what he really wanted you to focus on was that customer, what that customer needed, and how you were going to give that customer something that was different than all the competitors. So here we are. I started out and was hired into the company to lead their role on a DARPA program. DARPA is the Defense Research Organization, called STARS, Software Technology for Adaptable Reliable Systems. And SAIC's role was to focus on reuse. Back in that day, we didn't have apps. We didn't have these cool platforms like iPads and the mobile things that anybody can be an entrepreneur overnight by taking this platform and building something cool and unique and going out and selling it. In fact, software was in such a state that everyone was spending different amounts of money, whether it was government or industry or whatever, all building the same thing. No one was talking to each other. There was no catalog like you have in hardware. You couldn't go buy a part or pick a part. And you had egos that said, oh, I can't use that. If I didn't write it, you know, I'll have to rewrite the whole thing. So this was what was going on over and over again. And our whole idea was to get a little more discipline into the system, be able to build products that could be adaptable, scalable, and so forth. So that was it. And during that time and working with all these different researchers, we often heard the lament that you can never get things out of the lab and into the field, okay? So hold that thought for a minute, because that's going to become very important as I talk to you about how we advance. So back to SAIC and this phenomenal entrepreneurial company. I think I joined, there were about 7,000 employees, and what did we say, 44-something thousand today. So the idea was that you would be unburdened by these day-to-day things. So when you start a company, you have to worry about things like payroll and payroll taxes, and you need lawyers, you need accountants, you need all of these different support people, and you need good ones who know what they're doing. So SAIC provided all of that, okay? Not long after I joined, they asked me to move to Orlando and build a business for them in modeling and simulation. We'd had some offices here doing some CETA type work in logistics, but we hadn't really established ourselves in modeling and simulation. So I thought, wow, this is interesting. Now you mean I was an engineer, remember back all those jobs I had before? I was in the design side. I never saw a customer. That was the business development and the application engineer's job. I never saw a customer. I managed some people, but I didn't have to worry about whether or not they had a job. I just had to worry about, are they doing the work they're supposed to be doing? So I moved to Orlando, and all of a sudden I'm responsible for meeting the customers, finding out what they need, selling them on what we can do for them, winning work, hiring people, making sure I'm hiring the right people and they're getting the job done. Very entrepreneurial, all on my shoulders, all within this company. But thank goodness that that startup was supported by a corporation that made sure everyone got paid, payroll taxes got paid, and I had access to all this phenomenal talent. Now, the other thing that was just amazing about SAIC, from the board to everybody that was working, there were famous people. People who really knew the government, who had names, people. They were really well known, and they were guiding the company. They were individuals who were actually building businesses for their customers. So no matter what you needed in support, you could find that someone in SAIC knew how to do it or knew the customer. And that ranged from cleaning up oil spills to training dolphins to go find mines, to training our warfighters to make sure that they can go into battle knowing that they've felt and seen and experienced this immersion of what it's going to be like, so that they can go in and do their job and come back home. So here I am in Orlando. I have this great infrastructure. So it comes to, what does this customer need? And we were very fortunate at the time that the industry had been moving from single simulator systems, like the flight simulators and all, to needing simulation systems, which were very computer intensive and therefore software intensive. So, okay, we knew how to do that. We were good in software. We had an approach to software that we could talk to our customer about. That was this concept of reuse. But what were we going to do that would be our differentiator? And again, this comes from getting to know the people that are in the community. To the network point of view. When I first came here, there were and there still are today, and it's continuing to grow, some real heroes right here in Central Florida. And there was one in particular, his name's Earl Denton. And if you ever get involved in the modeling and simulation and training community, you'll hear about Earl. But he took me under his wing, got me on the Army Board of Governors, introduced me to the key players at Lockheed and all the other industry partners, took me in and introduced me to all the customers. And so I got to know people. And particularly, it was important to have those industry partners. So when the question was, what did we, SAIC, have to offer these industry partners that were going after these large programs? So we were too small. We could do research-like work, but my decision was, if we continue to do research-like work like the rest of the company was doing at the time, how are we ever going to solve that out of the lab into the field? And I had decided with my team that in order to do that, we needed to do both. We needed to continue the research work and continue to pursue with the universities collaborating on those opportunities, but in addition, find our niche and go after big programs, and then having both, we could ensure that we could transfer that technology onto the programs. So in doing that, working with the large primes, it seemed, in talking to them, that there was a gap in technology for the modeling and simulation systems that were being developed for training. And that was the whole area of computer-generated forces, or what we call semi-automated forces. Just to give you a snapshot what that's all about. You're training, you're on computers, everybody's role-playing, playing their role of what they're supposed to be doing in this exercise as if it's the real world, and you have operators changing the game, changing what's happening, so that you as a trainee can experience different opportunities to be shot at, or to shoot someone, or to move, logistically move supplies around and things like that. Okay, so what semi-automated forces or computer-generated forces do, they define the tactics of the battle, the scenario that you're going through, and they say, okay, this entity, whether it's a platoon or a tank or a cow, what does that entity do under these circumstances? Okay, so that's all described. It's all called doctrine and tactics, and it's how we fight, okay? And then that's simply talking about military training, but you can take that concept of modeling and simulation and take it into the business world, into the energy world, and health, and do the same things. How do you operate under different circumstances? So you see the beauty of modeling and simulation, right? You're reducing the risk because without spending any money, reducing the cost, and quickly running through examples, saving time, you can determine many courses of outcomes, which will then help you guide your decisions. Okay, so back to semi-automated forces. And what did we find out about that? Well, it was all software oriented. It was all about behaviors. It sounded a little bit like artificial intelligence. So we said, hey, we can do this. So we stepped in and took our smart software technology people that had been working on the reuse concept. We noticed that there were a lot of universities, there were a lot of corporations, there were a lot of government organizations that were building semi-automated forces, but no one was using each other's software, no one was talking to each other, so the whole state of the technology was kind of dampened by you could only go so far. Yet all this money was being spent to do the same thing. So this was our opportunity. Let's bring the concept of reuse to semi-automated forces. So what did that mean? That meant look at all the semi-automated forces software that's out there and decide what's common about it, and then taking what's common about it and building it once. Everyone uses that one time. No one ever rebuilds that piece. It's built so that it's adaptable and extensible. It can go on any hardware platform. And then you look at the pieces and you say, what changes? So you build those so they can be plug and play. And then you look at what's really unique, and you build a library that people can pick from. And then we have the opportunity to advance the whole technology. So that's our business model. Our business model for building Orlando was based on building what we call composable systems. You have a platform, you can change rapidly what you're going to use that platform for by doing the plug and play components, and then you can add unique features. And anyone can build off of it, and then when they build their unique things, other people can see it in the library and then build it themselves. So that was our first big thing that got us our name and got us really situated in what we call constructive simulation. So then we said to ourselves, wow, constructive simulation's gone so far, we've done well with it, but it's kind of flattening out. Virtual simulation is what's going on now. That's where the money is. So was our business model extensible? Could we expand it into the virtual world, which was like simulators? Now we had to deal with hardware. Okay, so we have a bunch of software people, now we have to deal with hardware. And it's more than just hardware computers, it's fabricating cabs, it's making sure that the look and feel of being in this simulator is as similar as possible to the real thing. And these simulators were ground simulators. So Stryker vehicle was the first one that we built. And we built it using this reusable concept. The customer had requested that things be built this way. And not long after the Stryker was fielded, we learned we needed to build an MRAP. Okay? These are up-armored vehicles. How were we training our soldiers to drive these up-armored heavy vehicles? We were handing keys to 18-year-olds to drive. And they were driving the actual, multi-million-dollar vehicles, right? So the simulators are very valuable in, again, saving resources, getting things done quicker, training you so that when you actually get in a real vehicle that costs a lot of money, that you've been there before, you've experienced it before. We reused 80% of that motion platform vehicle. All the station, the instructor station that's talking to the driver who's looking out the windows at these virtual screens, these games that we're playing to train these soldiers how to drive. Okay, so that worked. That was great. But the next thing that we had to experience is, could we get into the live training market? That's kind of what you call laser tag for the military. I know people get upset. They're in the military when I say that. My husband doesn't really like me saying that, but I'm trying to give you a sense of what it's like. You're putting laser equipment on weapons and on the vehicles, and you're putting all of our soldiers, you're traveling to an actual training center and going through an exercise as if you're on the battlefield. Okay, so that's where they really experience what it's like to be shot, okay? But it's a laser. All right, this is a well-established business area, live training. It's got a lot of competitors in it. They've been there a long time. Some of the equipment's about 20 years old. It's all very intensive hardware, lasers, you can imagine, miniaturized, all the communications that's required to determine whether or not that laser shot actually hit that sensor on that soldier and where and so forth, so that we get a sense of how we're training. That was a lot different than computers and integrating computer systems and hardware that already existed and putting it together. Well, I didn't feel that we could just do that from scratch or on our own like we had the other two areas. So we decided to go out and acquire a company, a small company that was left, and get this equipment. And so we went to a company that was state-of-the-art, had the same concept we did as far as everything's composable and reusable. Every time they built a system, they asked themselves, how does this fit with the new system? What can they improve? Can they change parts in and out? Could their customers create a training environment by putting different pieces together? So small, large, very expanded. So we bought a company, and that got us into the live training business. So now we are in live, virtual, constructive. And a lot of times we're training now by integrating those. So you really have to kind of have all three in order to do that. So what was left? What was left? What was our strategy? Gaming. How many of you are gamers? Yeah, okay. Well, there was a little problem with gaming, and that was a lot of times it really, if you, back in the day, and I don't know how good it is now, I'm not a gamer, but there was this problem with the law of physics. A lot of what the games would do really couldn't happen in the real world, right? So is that going to be good training, or you know, are we going to have negative training? And it's a very competitive industry, as you all probably know. A lot of gaming companies have come and gone, and they're a little more focused maybe on Hollywood and the game market than they are for training our warfighters. So we were a little slow to get into that, but I got a call one day about an opportunity to buy the IP for a virtual world. And a virtual world is, again, this virtual world was built the way we build things. It was built with a platform and features that you could create new worlds very rapidly by picking up existing worlds and adapting to them. So you could go into a world and say you want a command center, and the screens are already there, the tables are already there. So you have your avatars, and you can go into these worlds and start recreating what life's going to be like, and create that opportunity for decision makers to collaborate, to look at the same screens at the same time and make their alternative decisions. So we acquired them very quickly, and now we have live, virtual, constructive, and gaming, and very few companies have all of those aspects of modeling and simulation. Okay, so we had a strategy, we followed our strategy, it guided our decisions, we stayed focused, we got ourselves into each aspect of the market, and then we advanced on to position ourselves from a small company into a much larger presence here in the research park. So let me also now talk to you a little bit more about the networking and the relationship building, because that's so important. As I mentioned, it was those relationships that got me into the community, introduced me to the customers, introduced me to industry partners, and really helped us to advance, okay? And, but the next thing that was really cool, and I have to admit something now, this is my confession, I don't play golf. So if you don't play golf, how are you going to develop all these relationships and get to know these people and so forth? And they asked that question at a panel I was on for the Society of Women Engineers, and I said, who has time to play golf? I raised my 2 daughters, you know, got them through school while I was building this business. Now I have granddaughters. Who has time to play golf? So I will tell you how I did this. And I was a little late coming into the social community for donations and philanthropy and all of this, because I really got involved when my daughters went to college. So when Michelle went to Georgia Tech and Tiffany went to UCF, and they both got computer science degrees, by the way. Tiffany is finishing up her master's in industrial engineering now. I got to know all of these people and what they were interested in, what the problems were at the universities. I got the opportunity to donate to help set up scholarships. I got to work with them on some innovative ideas. And there's a great book out right now that you'll want to read, especially if you're planning on being associated with the university. It's Engines of Innovation. And this is all about an entrepreneurial university. So the relationship I have with Georgia Tech, with UCF, with PKI is all about entrepreneurism. And it's now we're calling this social entrepreneurism. And locally in the community, when I've been involved in working on boards for charities, I've had to call on my friends who are also very well known in the community and say, hey, I need to change this board out. Will you join this board? They've called me and say, hey, we're trying to collect money. Will you donate? That's my golf game. It's all about working with each other and helping each other to reach their social goals and build a better community. This community right here around this university has a phenomenal government industry university partnership. And so it's been a great place to build a business, to be a business entrepreneur, and also to be a social entrepreneur. And that's what I'm leaving my message with you today. I know it's hard out there. I know it's a little scary because of the job market. What I would advise you to do, if you're a little scared of starting your own business, but you could do both, go out and volunteer. You'd be amazed who you meet. You'd be amazed how much you learn, okay? And you never know. When someone sees you and sees how hard you work and how passionate you can be, they might give you a job. Or they might fund starting you up in your business. So that's my advice to you. Whether it's business entrepreneurism, social entrepreneurism, do them both. But that's a really great way to get started when you're leaving the school. Thank you for the great opportunity to talk to you. And I think now I'll entertain questions, and feel free to ask me anything you want.
Were your customers ever the government? Did you ever have them call you up in your business and say, we need to do something for us?
All our customers are government customers. And yeah, they call us all the time and ask us to do things, particularly because we do research. We invest a lot in research. We want them to know what we're doing, and we want to know what their problems are. So we kind of work together.
Do you do private too?
Private.
If some private owner calls you up?
Commercial. We've done a little bit of commercial, and there's parts of the company that are really expanding in commercial, and you'll see that more in the health and energy. And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't mention it, but the idea of creating this Modeling and Simulation Center of Excellence was all about taking all this wonderful work we learned in modeling and simulation for training, particularly military training, and asking ourselves across the company, what can we do in healthcare? What can we do in energy? What can we do with cyber? And bringing these worlds together to rapidly come up with some solutions that, and some opportunities to test out what might work and what won't. There was another question? Yes?
How do you feel that the quality of the UCF graduates you see coming into SAIC compare with some of the other colleges you employ?
So we probably hire more UCF graduates than others, and here's one of your, all three, right? Did you get undergraduate, master's, PhD, Robert Francischini? He's my Chief Technology Officer, and I've mentored Robert over the years since he graduated from here, and he could be an entrepreneur. He's very entrepreneurial, very creative, and yeah, we've got very good quality students here, and I will say my daughter is doing extremely well at Raytheon, running a very large program. So I'd say, yeah, you do a good job of creating quality students.
So in today's patent market, with patent trolls, with conglomerates suing each other day in and day out, how can the individual entrepreneur succeed?
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? You need a good lawyer. No. You need to get with people who know how to do that, and I think you've got an incubator here, and I know they have at Georgia Tech as well. These two schools do a really good job of helping startups, and I would say if you've got a really good idea, go work with these people to figure out how to protect it. Don't think you're going to avoid being sued. I mean, these things happen, and but the most important thing is to make sure you're protected, and there's all sorts of rules and laws for that. So I would say don't try and do it on your own. Get with the experts.
Did you guys ever work on integrating commercial military software and military software, such as like talk about the Battlefield series, the Call of Duty series, and the gaming versus what the military uses? Did you look at that, like integrating the actual
the actual game?
The actual.
Didn't really do that. I couldn't say that. They're building the games for training right now, and I'm not sure that they actually integrate the commercial products. They might get some of their ideas from there too. I mean, the military is very much looking at the whole gaming world because that's the generation that's coming in, that's how they want to be trained, and that's how they want to learn. So there's definitely applicability, and there are many programs out there to get this started. But you'd have to ask the guys that work for me whether they are actually playing Call of Duty or not. I think we got it at our house. Yes.
So Research Park has a lot of simulation companies, a lot of really big ones, and you mentioned how you do collaborations or with them, but and there are also a lot of competitors, I'm sure. So how do you balance that?
I think that's what the social network's all about.
Yeah.
You know, I really do. We're all friends, and I've been in a lot of different communities, and it's not the same. We will go after each other and compete and win or lose. We'll team. We'll partner tomorrow, and we recognize that right up front, and we say that. So it's all the social activities that we have that are supporting our war fighters, pulling together boxes of supplies and equipment that our soldiers need. As a community, we get together and do that. Helping our wounded warriors when they come back. As a community, we do that. Helping the families that are left behind while the war fighters are deployed. We get together as a community and do that. And so I think back again to that social network, and those relationships allow you to persist. And that's what lasts beyond the single competition, a win-lose situation. Other questions? Yes?
You mentioned early on that one of the real benefits to working at SAIC was they had the infrastructure to allow you to be a real entrepreneur.
Right.
For one of us trying to start our own business, is there a company that kind of provides that infrastructure as part of their services?
Well, I believe there are a lot of companies that are trying to form that model. And so I suggest you research two things. Research entrepreneurial company and see if the company says that's part of their whole strategy. But the other part of it is look for employee-owned companies. SAIC was an employee-owned company, and that was also really cool because Dr. Beister believed that the people who really worked hard and built the company should share in the wealth. And that really motivates people to do the right thing. But also, again, I'll go back to these universities and the incubators and the environment that's being created around them in the community to start companies and create jobs. And they have a lot to offer, and you've got a lot to offer right here. Yes?
What do you see as the future for the simulations market?
I think that market is going to explode because we just don't have the money anymore to try risky things that don't work. We don't have the resources or the time, and we can't take the risks to make a decision and then find out wrong answer. So simulation allows us to create these alternative solutions that allow us to look at second, third order effects of our decisions and do that in a quick, low cost, and low risk way. So I really believe in modeling and simulation, which is why I was really excited about taking modeling and simulation, that all we developed here and going into our other vertical markets and getting us positioned quickly where other companies were well established by having a differentiator where we could say, see, this is what we can do for you, and using simulation to demonstrate the possibilities. Yes?
Has your company ever looked into haptic surgical simulation, or has it been mostly military?
No, we're moving into medical simulation now. That was one of the first advantages of bringing our health people and our simulation people together. I think that's going to be a very, very big market. And wouldn't you rather your doctor did that operation a few times before and got some experience at it before. He was practicing on you, right? Yeah, good. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Can you talk about some of the challenges that you face as a woman in a male-dominated profession, and what advice would you have for the women in the audience?
Okay. You're recording this right now. So this is a good opportunity to say one of the first things I learned, and it was a very hard lesson, and it really applies to men as well, is you're going to have to accept the fact that not everyone's going to like you, and not everyone's going to support you in what you're doing. And so the way to overcome that, in my mind, is to build a team. And find those, again, that social network and those supporters. And when you have someone that's acting like they don't like you or they don't support you, then the best thing for you to do is probably not engage with them as a start and find someone else who you do well with to engage with them. But the second thing I always want to tell people as well is, you know, be really careful with email. The best way to solve a problem is to go talk to the person. And I think this is particularly important for women because what you may find in talking to the person and getting to know each other is they're not really doing what you think they're doing, or they don't have the motives you may be attributing to them. And it's getting to know them and solving a problem that builds the trust that allows you to go solve harder problems and work in more challenging times when there's more friction. There's always going to be some kind of friction or competition, or it's just human nature. But don't avoid it, because that's not solving any problem. And don't be confrontational, but learn and just practice. You know, you're a shy person, force yourself to go to social situations, force yourself to talk to people, find one person, have a story to tell, have a way of engaging them and telling their story. But now the third thing I will say about that is I didn't have a mentor in my career, and that was challenging, I think. So today, that's one of the reasons we piloted the mentoring program that's now been very successful at SAIC, and we have a program going on right now with UCF called the WISE program, where we are matching women in engineering and STEM projects in, I think it's sophomore, junior year, because we want to retain these women. And we're matching them with industry women, local industry women, about 5 years out was what we were looking for, so that they could match the mentors and the mentorees. And we're using the same vendor that we used at SAIC to do this. And the thing is, I'll be honest, it wasn't so difficult with Michelle and Georgia Tech, but with Tiffany, my younger one, she was not really sure she wanted to have this computer degree and be in engineering. So I would say, okay, what do you want to do? And she'd say, I don't know, and she's going to kill me when she hears me saying this, but she said, I don't know, and I said, well, stay in engineering until you know. It's easier to get out than it is to get in. And of course, now she's working on her master's. So I think that once the women can see what the possibilities are, you know, you're talking a long time to get to my age level, but very short term. When you see how successful these women are, you see that they have families, you see they have children, they still could do their job and have families and children and do sports and everything else, and that we're all normal people, we have a geeky bent to us, but we're still normal, then I think that that will help. So seek out people, and I would say this whether you're a man or a woman, you know, seek out friends and seek out people above you and below you and just ask. But when you go to ask somebody who's really busy for help, they're really busy. So make sure you know what you want. Make sure when you go in, you can tell them, this is what I need, can you help me? Can you help me? Not do it for me, but can you help and guide me? And most people will. Any other questions?
Another question.
Yes.
Do you do any partnering with any other countries? Like, do you do business for any other countries, or is it mainly for U.S.?
No, the simulation business is huge internationally. Yes.
When you're hiring new grads from either UCF or where else, what kind of items do you look for on a resume or during the interview process?
Oh, I would say you're looking for well-rounded people, okay? You're looking for people that want to work on a team, because that lone guru that we used to hire back in the day when I first came out, you can't do that anymore. These problems are too complex. So it's got to be somebody who's willing to work on a team. And we're looking for a good, solid education. You have that here. And, you know, you need to work hard. I don't know how much I can say that. It's just amazing to me how many people don't want to work very hard. So, especially with the teamwork, okay? And you've got situations where people are in different stages of their lives. And I went through a period when my daughters were in high school and I didn't want to travel very much. And so other people filled in for me, they traveled. So as soon as my daughters got in college, I did all the traveling so they could stay home and have their babies and help raise those young ones. So it's a team, it's a community. So we're looking for people that want to be part of a community.
Any more questions? All right, well, let's thank Ms. Seay.
Oh, thank you very much.
We are very grateful that you were here today and shared with us your personal experience